I am ADHD. My biochemistry isn't to be present. I'm always thinking about what's next. I have a life verse, and it's Matthew 6:33, which says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and everything will be added unto you." But when you read that entire chapter, don't worry about tomorrow, for today has enough worries of itself. My imagination was a gift and a curse. The practical suffocates the wonder out of us.
How do you think that this idea of wonder and being present relates to being an authentic leader?
Leaders are those who are going to have to see a new way. It gets so complex that I've had to make life simple. Hey, what's up, guys? I want to welcome you back to another episode of the New Rules Podcast. It's your boy, Adrian, here, and I'm joined by the one, the only, the indispensable
Breezy.
What's up? How are you?
I'm doing well. Things have been busy for us.
They have been.
In a good way.
They have. They definitely have been. We have been hosting things, traveling, a little bit of stuff. I mean, I'm 44 years old, and I got the chicken pox. That's wild, right?
Like the second time.
For the second time, I told my wife. First time I texted my wife when the doctor told me, I was like, I really am him. You know what I'm saying? I really am him.
My God.
I get rare stuff.
I'm 1% of the world in every area. That's funny.
No, but it's been great. But hey, if you are here for the first time, we are so thankful that you decided to join the New Rules Pod, and we exist really to help you write new rules. We believe that the world's in desperate need of those who write new rules, and in that, we believe new rules starts from a place of authenticity. We define that as self-awareness, resilience to remain self-aware. We believe authentic leaders are needed in the world today, and so that's really what this pod's all about. It's about helping dive deep to help really unlock your authentic self and your authentic leadership. And so we're excited. And again, make sure you like, you subscribe, you do all the stuff. Share if you see our content on social, if it's of help at all. And man, it's an honor, for those as a kind of really the community starts to grow and keeps growing. It is just an honor that people actually take time to actually listen and stuff like that. So with that being said, Bri, you did something really interesting for the first time.
I did.
You did. And you were absolutely amazing at it. You actually, for those of you guys as you are getting to know us, even like for Bri to actually be on this podcast, for Bri to be talking in front of a camera in itself is a miracle. And then Bri was like, nah, forget all that. That's, but what I'm saying? I'm taking it to another level. And Bri actually taught, in one of our sessions on predictive index in front of people, things like that. Normally, Bri, you do a lot of background, operation stuff. But man, the gift came out and you did it. So how did you feel? Again, most people getting in front of people to speak, they rather die. Literally would rather die than speak in front of people. Mm-hmm. And I know that's been a hurdle that you've had to get over. So you did such a great job. And so I think, how did it feel? What's your takeaways from it?
Mm-hmm. I was so scared. I was so nervous. And most of the fear in that comes from just being yourself and not being liked when you are yourself. And so I get so much anxiety around oh my gosh, I'm going to do this thing and people are going to hate me. And so I like the idea of just taking content and teaching it, because then I'm just talking about something and it has no reflection of me. Mm-hmm. So to do something where I had to include some stories, I had to talk about just my personal experiences in some way while also teaching content, explaining why it was important. I think that was the scariest part for me. Yeah. Because it required me to show up and be present and be myself. Yep. And that's always really vulnerable.
100%.
And you're putting yourself on the line to be judged. And so that was the scariest part.
Yeah. How long did it take you, prep-wise?
Everything together, I would say, probably 10 hours.
Yeah.
Probably 10 to 15 hours. And that's not, sitting there and coming up with something. But when you're talking, I know I just learned this. It's always sitting in your brain. Yep. And so it's I'm showering, I'm doing a completely different task, and it's just circulating in my head what I'm going to say, and I'm playing it over and over and over. So with all of that, probably a pretty substantial amount of hours for a 20-minute
talk.
Yeah.
It is, and I always tell people when, I've in different environments have been speaking for a long time. And so I tell people, yeah, you can give me a topic and I can now come up with it pretty fast. But when you're first starting, it just takes time. I never forget when I first started, just whether if it was just communicating in leadership settings or sermons or anything like that, it would take me, sometimes I'm like, if it was a sermon, I'm like 25, 30 hours. And so when people start communicating for the first time, they actually don't want to go through that process. Mm-hmm. They're like, why is it, they're frustrated. Man, I should be able to get this faster. And I'm like, no, that pain, that fear of like, dude, what if I bomb? Or like, man, I don't think I have this content in order. Mm-hmm. All that's just a part of like growth, of learning how to take something and be able to bring it. I think it actually really does, develop somebody. So, but man, yeah, 10 to 15 hours for like 20 minutes. But it actually showed when you got there. I mean, very prepared. And it wasn't like the content you're delivering. It's just kind of just you're telling from a personal story. I mean, you're having to deliver some in-depth content around personality, and
it was pretty complex.
Yes, and so to be able to do that, that's why other parts of the research to do that, and also again the 10 to 15 hours with information and stuff you already had some idea about as well, but now to actually put it and present it your own self. So I thought you again killed a good job, and like everything, now you found yourself a new job. So
I know, now it's like, and you're doing it every time. Now I have like multiple dates on my calendar to do even more. But that's exciting. I definitely learned for the first time whenever it comes to speaking and preparing, because I don't ever see that. I just see the finished product for the most part, is that you're not just like wrestling with the content that you're teaching. There's like this whole internal dialogue and like personal wrestling that you're doing the entire time.
Yeah.
So something that I can come to, respect of the process too, is that it makes you face things that you would never face.
Yeah.
Like there's like thoughts about myself and like about the world that I'm feeling and that I'm having to like wrestle through while working through that process that I would probably never like be forced to face if I wasn't, having to think about how I was going to present the topic.
Yeah, I tell people, even if it's in a small gathering of like 5 people or 2 people, the idea of presenting something, I think every person, every leader should actually do it, should go through that process, because what you just said, it makes you face some things. It makes you have to wrestle an idea and to develop an idea and to take content and shrink content down in a way that's deliverable, and the tapping into the emotions of people, or are you just reading a book to somebody? I think it's really, really important to be able to do that. And so again, Bri, incredible job.
Thank you.
Incredible job. All right. Well, today, guys, we're going to be talking about an idea, concept that's been swirling around in my head over the last couple months, I would say, and it's this idea of the pursuit of wonder, And so I think today, as we dive into it, you're going to see how this is so impactful for leaders. To be an authentic leader into the world, this 21st century leader, I think wonder is going to be really, really important.
Why has this topic been on your mind?
It's been on my mind because I have really felt of late this idea of being present. This thought that I feel like I need to do a better job of being present. Now, for me, I am ADHD. I have a severe case of ADHD. I'm a futurist as well. And so from the ADHD standpoint, my biochemistry isn't to be present. It's just my mind's always racing. And then with the idea of a skill set of like always thinking about the future and how do I get movement, I'm always thinking about what's next, right? And so because of that, I am missing moments. I think some of this hits with the fact that my children are getting older. So I found myself lately looking at pictures, feeling like when my kids were just, my son's 18 and my daughter's 15.
Which I feel like you do that once a week.
I do.
Like once a week I find you and you're like scrolling through like photos from 2008 and I'm like, another crisis.
Yeah, I know, man, and it really is. And my youngest, as we're recording this today, my 12-year-old went on her first like overnight camp, and it's just like, it's really one of those moments when you're and you start to realize like, I think we've had, we've captured a lot of great moments, but I also realize out of the many times a parent, the worries, the hopes, the dreams, that you start to miss the moments. And so I'm trying to, so in that, it's really been pushing me. And I also think too, with some of which at some point I'll share later, some of the health stuff I've been walking through, and everything's good and moving in the right direction. But it's just this moment where I'm always just in the future. And I think even something that's impacted me and impacted my body, always thinking and going. And so I just have tried to be, okay, what is in the present? And so as I've been in the present, something interesting has happened. I have found myself just with like wonder. And when I mean by wonder, I mean like awe, just stuff that like takes your breath away, stuff where you're just like, man, and it's been the most simplest things, you know? It's been like in eating a meal. I normally you just eat, right? You know, you taste food, that's good. But you don't ever really like try to like taste, what am I actually like, what am I eating? Like what are all the flavors that are here? Or if I'm in a conversation, trying to really enjoy the conversation and being in the moment, not trying to figure out like, okay, they're asking me a question, or if I hear something, you know, me and you do this, and this is something I'm trying to be better at, where you'll just start talking and then you'll say something, you'll bring something up, and I'm like, oh man, okay. And I feel, okay, let me help her. And instead of just being like, no, just let me listen. And then just being present in the moment. And I found myself just having great conversations. I found myself reflecting on things like song lyrics and movies and things as a child. And it's made me just have this wonder, this awe of just the smallest things in life. And it's been producing a lot of things in me. And so this whole idea of being present, I never knew that this idea of wonder would be there. And I didn't even realize it was something I lost, but it was actually something that's been a really pleasant surprise.
I feel like when we typically think of wonder, it's related to fantasy, but you're describing it with being present. Can you tie those two a little bit tighter for me?
Yeah, when I think of wonder, yeah, you're right. When we think of wonder, we may think of Harry Potter. You know, is that what you mean by that? Like, or more of a fantasy like that, or are you more of a dream?
Or more like when you think of wonder, at least I kind of think of daydreaming.
Yeah.
I think of being super like tied in with a thought, but you're saying like you're being present in the moment and you're paying attention to yourself and your environment, and you're associating that with wonder. Yeah,
but what I'm doing is that I do think it can go there, because I think if all of a sudden you're sitting there and, you know, I've great example, I've been listening to podcasts called The Rewatchables, where they go back and they watch a lot of movies in general, and they give behind the stage scenes. This on it's with Bill Simmons and his whole crew at Grantland. And so I'm watching it and I'm listening to the pod, and so they brought up, you know, I was watching this old school movie Juice, or they're doing it, and I'm like, and in a moment, I'm just in the moment listening just to the podcast, not trying to think about, you know, sometimes you listen to podcasts like that, you know, you may be like, oh, well, I'm over here cleaning something, or I'm doing this. I'm like, no, I'm going to try to actually like listen. And as I'm listening, there's a scene in the movie. And in the scene in the movie, it brought me back. So I'm like replaying. I stopped the pod and I'm replaying the scene the first time I saw it, and it brought me back. And man, and just in a moment, I was super thankful for first time I saw it. I was living in Akron, and I just started thinking about like Akron. I started thinking about my friends. I started thinking about how that city, it's a tough city, but that city like made me. And so I just got this wonder of like, man, I'm so thankful for like, honestly, how I believe in my faith, the providence of God that put me in Akron. And so just something that simple took me to a daydream place or a wonder place, but it made me thankful. Just kind of, that's something that simple, being in the moment. But I think it can take you to those places.
Yeah. Why do you feel like you lost it?
Life, practical. You got bills to pay, right? You got mortgage. You got, you know, we've got, you know, a war going on in Russia, Ukraine. You've got interest rates high. We have clients to work with. You have kids. You have a spouse. You have all these things that like are real life practical things you have to do. And I think sometimes the practical suffocates the wonder out of us, because what we're told as we continue to get older, you know, think about this when you were a kid and you would just start playing with a toy or whatever it is. And again, remember, it could be a stick. It could be anything. You're just like, man, next thing you know, you got your own world you've created with this stick or this toy or with anything. And then as you get older, I mean, it's like, no, you got to do this and be like responsible. And so I think responsibility, which I'm all for responsibility, I think it just slowly just kills wonder. And what I mean by that, it just starts to be, this is just what I do. And it just starts to take away some of the most simple things that are actually just all inspiring. I mean, there's times where, like the other day, I'm sitting on my back porch, it's raining. And it was like, I'm watching it rain. And it was one of the most peaceful things, watching it rain. I mean, it was so peaceful. And I'm like, just being thankful for like that. And just like sitting there just staring at it. But it's rain. But I think man, why are you staring at the rain? Don't you got you know, I got laundry to go do. Like stuff like that. So I think the practical can suffocate it.
Yeah. I was going to bring up, if you feel like wonder kind of overlaps a little bit with childlikeness and you feel like those qualities can be similar. What did wonder look like for you when you were a kid?
Oh my gosh. It was epic because my imagination was a gift and a curse. And it's still a gift and a curse. My imagination was a thing that I could escape in. I could be the guy, and it helped me become a really good basketball player because I could be on a court by myself, and I would just have imaginary basketball games all the time. I could literally visualize playing. And, if I'm going by this guy, his hands are going to be here, so I could put the ball over here. And then I would then I would literally play myself, and I would throw the ball out to somebody, and I run and go get it. Now I'm playing a completely different player now. And I would play in that vein as that player with that skill set versus my skill set. And all this is going on. That's just on the basketball court. I mean, I would do it with toys, and it was just I would get lost in these worlds where I would just sort of imagine and do this. And what it brought in me was this creativity. It brought in me this time, but also it was a relief for me because of a lot of internal emotional pain that I had as a kid. It was a relief. It was the place I could go to relieve the internal pain. And so I just used to live there. I used to live there like a lot, but also it was a negative part to me as well, in the sense to where my imagination, when I get caught in there, even on dark stuff, my imagination can run with that too. So it's a gift and a curse, but as a kid, the wonder of it. And so every little thing just was like, man, it took my breath away. That's why it was really hard when I moved from Knoxville, Tennessee, because I would be me and my friends, we would do stuff. We play war outside. We play capture the flag, and we would do all these things together, and our imagination would run wild. And I felt like when I was leaving there, I was leaving a place where I first started to discover how the simplest things just can be breathtaking.
Yeah. That reminds me of the thing that people talk about a lot, where it's like at some point you played with your neighborhood friends for the last time, and you had no idea it was the last time. And as an adult, you read that and you're like, dang, that's so true.
It is.
For so many things, and it's so sad. Do you have a moment that you can point to where you had that realization of like, oh, I don't do that the same. Like I don't play and I don't wonder in the same way that I used to?
Yeah, I think honestly, over the last, like I said, really the last few months, I think my creativity and my wonder, I would say this, I've still had my imagination and all those things, but I lost the ability to get down even to like making a simple thing can turn to a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've lost that a lot, and over the last few months I started noticing it, and it really began because of some of the like health scare that I had. And so, I mean, I don't mind sharing it on here, but I was, I've been sick for the last, like, off and on. I mean, you've been a part of this process of often not feeling well. And so then I was like, man, okay, I got to get healthy. So, started losing weight, started doing that, still wasn't feeling well. Short story go, Mayo Clinic, and they diagnosed me with Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease. It's something that's livable. It's, same expectation of life. But what it's made me do is that some of the things that can onset Graves as a thing is like some research is stress. And I started realizing that, man, a lot of stuff I worry about and a lot of stuff that my mind goes to, it gets so complex that I've had to make life simple. That I had to say, okay, what are the main things for me and make them simple. And as I've done that, it's just, I realized at times like, man, I just have stopped. I stopped like just, being inspired by just the most random things, And so it's not like I completely lost it, but it definitely was like, moments of it instead of it kind of being something that I've been trying to practice and see almost every day.
Yeah. And if you don't want to get into it, definitely let me know. But as someone who's very futuristic, lives in the future, and really likes to drive, what was that moment like for you? Like that's a very existential moment. And so do you mind sharing a little bit about what that shaking was like and how it pushed you to be more appreciative of the small things?
Yeah, I think that what it did in that moment was there's a lot of emotion around it, because prior to them saying what I had to get an MRI because they did a CAT scan or did what they call a heart coronary thing, which again, guys, if you get a chance to do that, it tells you how much calcium or plaque you have in your heart. And so I had 0. So I was like, oh, it's amazing. But then at the bottom it says, oh, but we found a shadow, a lesion, a mass in your chest. So you hear mass and you're like, okay. And they're like, it could be this thing called thymic hyperplasia, which is nothing. Thymus gland, it's supposed to shrink, but because of, with Graves, you have an overactive thyroid, it can expand it. But they didn't know that at that time. Or it could be cancer. And so there's this moment, man, I'll never forget, walking, and I was in Mayo Clinic, and it was like a movie. Those moments when you watch a movie and you're just like where someone's got difficult news or they're in a tough spot where it's like you're in the hospital and or you're in a place and you're like alone. I mean, I'm in Mayo Clinic and I'm walking down this hallway and there's no one there. It's just me. It's like 8:30 at night to get this, and there's no one. I'm going to the place. So in between where I was walking to there, I did not see I get in the elevator and I had to walk across this wing. And I'm talking about, I did not see a person until I got to where I was getting my my MRI. And as I was walking, I was like, this is like, I was like, this can't be real. I was like, okay. And I'll never forget, I'm walking, I pinched myself to see, I'm like, this is a dream now. And they have it on camera. I probably look crazy. I'm smacking my head. Like the camera, I'm smacking my head. Like, this is a dream. Wake up, wake up. And I was like, it's not. And it was one of those moments, man, where it freaks you out. And as a person of faith, I'd say it's so easy to say, like, oh, how in the Christian faith that we believe in life after death. We believe in the resurrection of Jesus, and we believe this life is not the end, all that. That stuff's easy to say until you're like, oh, this could potentially be something. And what was going on inside of me in that moment was like, I have worried about, I'm telling you, when you get to that place, all you think about is the things that actually matter. It really is so true. All I was thinking about was like my wife, my children, and how they would feel if I had to tell them this. Not so much me. I thought about you. I thought about the rest of our staff. I'm like, how are they going to feel? And it makes the main things become the main things. But what I also realized in that moment was that, hey, if I come out on the other side of this, whatever it is, I am going to just be way more just in the moment. And as I was sitting there and, I was sitting in this MRI tube and, again, it's horrible because you're inside a freaking like this coffin.
All I can think about is the movie It.
Oh, dude.
2.
Listen, that or the one movie, the one little preview we just saw a minute ago of that creepy movie. It's Insidious and the freaking dude's in a tube and this little creature. I'm like, what? I'm like,
you're
thanks.
like hard space and you're like, I hope this doesn't affect the MRI.
I know, right? I mean, you're inside it. So I'm inside this MRI thing and it's like, and, I have a life verse, and it's Matthew 6:33, which says, seek first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and everything will be added unto you. But when you read that entire chapter, it talks so much about, one of the verses, don't worry about tomorrow, for today has enough worries of itself. And realizing all that just kept coming to me while I'm sitting there. It's like don't worry about tomorrow, for today has enough worries of itself. Mm-hmm. And the whole premise of it is just that God has got things under control. He's abundant. Don't freak out about stuff that everybody freaks out about. Just be in the moment. And so from that place, I was like, I'm going to be in the moment. I'm going to do my absolute best to be in the moment, regardless of what comes out. Now, it come out, it wasn't cancer, it was thymic hyperplasia, but still, it's stuck with me of like being really in the moment.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of morbid, but so was what you had to face in the moment. Would you have been satisfied with everything you've done into your life up until that point if something were to have happened to you?
That's a great question. Honest answer, yes and no. I think yes in the sense of I really do think. And when I say this stuff, I hope everyone who hears this, this is always hard because you always have these conversations and people want to say, oh, we give depending on where you live at or what your beliefs are, we always want to say like, oh, it's all because of the grace of God. Yes. So, but everything I'm about to say from this, I know everything that happens in my life is a gift from God. I realized that, man, yes, because I realized there are a lot of people I've actually helped through the gifts and things that God has given me that have helped set them on the right path. That's actually helped them. I got a text on Father's Day from someone who worked for me, and it was probably one of the most thoughtful texts I've ever gotten and it was about me being a father. That he thought, man, normally being a father, and this, I'll get back to your question, but like normally, I saw being a father was about somebody who provided. So, young black man, I thought it was about somebody who provided. But he was like, I saw how you engaged your son. And that's always a question for me, is always a question, am I really a good dad? And then seeing somebody who, he was with me all the time, like all the time. And, and he was training myself. He was with Jalen a lot. He was with me a lot. And for him to say, like, man, I realized that how I said this, in my head, he said to me on the text, he was like, I thought about how lucky Jalen is to have you. And that if I ever have kids, I really want to be like you. And he was like, I know we kind of, I work with you. We were partners, business partners, but you weren't a big brother. You're like a second dad to me. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate you for setting that example. And I'm talking about, like, this is like, Father's Day, as we're recording, like a week ago. And my point of why I said that, I hear stories like that. And I'm like, oh, I've done stuff like that. I remember I look at you and where you were at, and now realizing, if something were to happen, it was like, oh no, Bri is moving in a place and a course to where, man, I think, where I think you're going to shake the world. So I was like, oh, so I could go on and on. And so I think yes, but then no, because I'm like, there's so much more. Mm-hmm. There's so much more I feel like to do. And so I feel like it would be yes and no.
Okay, so how do you think that this idea of wonder and being present relates to being an authentic leader?
I think that in the world that we're in right now, leaders are those who are going to have to see a new way. We are in a gray zone, as I've said before, that I've got that phrase that was coined by Mark Sayers, to where there was rules of the game before, and now we're in a gray zone where there's new rules being written. And, I don't know how long that gray zone lasts for. So in that, the world's unpredictable. And so in unpredictable worlds, leaders have to have the ability to be present, to see what solutions are, but also what wonder can do. Wonder expands your imaginations and your ability to produce solutions. Because if you are not in a place of constantly trying to think through, of solving problems, you can miss problems. You can miss solutions that are right in front of you. I think in the future, some of the most impactful solutions are going to come from the simplest things. Now, they may be deep in concept underneath it all, but there'll be simple things that are brought to the world. And I think that comes from wonder. I think it comes from thinking about something and pondering it. It's like that could be as simple as looking at a stick or a leaf and seeing the colors change and all that. And you're like, man, there'd be a great color for this. And what if I went over here, and that color for that leaf? And man, what if we added that to, this video I'm producing? And man, what if I produce that and this video does this? And now all of a sudden you create a whole new, I don't even know what the word terms are. So Grady, the producer out there, was grading the stuff, and it's this, and man, you produce a new package of filters, and whatever it is, and it all came by you just looking at a leaf, and it just kind of went from there. But that's a simple thing everybody's been trying to solve. Man, we need something new. I think it starts there. I think it helps leaders start to build the muscle of finding solutions in the most simplest ways and most simplest forms. And I think but you have to train your body and your mind to actually do that.
Mm-hmm. That was going to be my next question. Do you think that it's a skill that can be developed? Is it like a state of being? Do people naturally have it a little bit more than others?
I think people, I would say this. I think people can maybe start with a little bit more. I think we all have access for it. I think that, but to answer your question, I think it is a state of being. I think the skill is being present. Present is the skill. Wonder is like a state of being. I think being able to say, okay, I'm going to really try to work on being right now in this moment, in this podcast. Like as we're doing this podcast, this is probably honestly the most present I have felt doing a podcast, because I'm not thinking about, oh, man, okay, we got to do this and we got to do this. And what about this? And what's going to be the next question that gets asked? And what about this? And what do I got to do after this? And all those things. But it's being in the moment. And I think it's really a state of being. But I think the practice of being present, I think that's a practice. I think that's something you just have to constantly remind yourself. You have to do like you can do exercise. Say, man, you know, everybody is on mindfulness now, and everything like that, and whatever you want to practice, however you want to do it, but taking a moment to just be there. And that, again, that's one of the ways I do. There's times where, you know, I'll go over and, you know, I like after I work out or something like that, I'll go in the steam room. And sometimes what I do, I just have my AirPods in, but I just sit in silence and I just let my mind go. It's not like I'm trying to focus on this one thing right here. I just let it go. Wherever it goes, it goes. But I'm just being silent. I'm not trying to talk. I'm not trying to think. I'm just letting my mind go. And so I think it's just a practice. So I think that, again, wonder is a state of being. I think being present is something you work on.
So for somebody who maybe they're working in corporate, maybe they're super left-brained, and they are just like, you know, crunching numbers all day, like what does being present look like for somebody within that space?
Yeah, I think it's being able to, first of all, not just saying, here's this task list, because if you're working a lot of times on the left side, it's okay, man, here's it's the cognitive side. I'm doing this. This is what I'm trying to get knocked out. And in trying to do that, man, I'm just trying to get my checklist off. So let me get through the spreadsheet. Let me get this report done. So if I get this report done quick, I can get to my next report, or I can get to my next thing. So you're doing the report because it's just the job, instead of saying, man, when I'm present, I'm actually thinking about, okay, and some of the stuff is just, and some of the stuff you've done it enough to where it's just like brushing your teeth, right? So that's a little bit harder because you're like, oh, yeah, I've done this, you know, I've done this report 15 million times. So it's just kind of natural. But what you can do is you start getting in there. You may find a new way. You may find a more efficient way. You may find a mistake that could be something that could ultimately impact the company. It could be a mistake that someone made that you're going to take the fall for because you didn't catch it because you were just kind of going through kind of the motions or just doing it. And I think that's how you have to do it. You can't just see things as a checklist. It's you know, the wonder of life, man, the fact that you are where you're at, living where you're at, and your job may not be the best job. It may not be where you want to be as far as in your career, but I always try to tell people we live in, like, America has its sets of issues. I've traveled the world. I don't want to live anywhere else. I'm not saying that this is better than other places, but I really like it here. But also in really liking it here, it's that, man, we have so much access to so many great things. And I think sometimes when you get to wonder, it makes you become thankful. It makes you become thankful for the job. And so I think sometimes instead of us just trying to get through the task list and just get through it, man, be present, because I think thankfulness can actually flow from that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like sometimes, in a lot of how we're talking about it, what we typically do is just like we skim the surface of a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And some of what you're describing wonder as is reducing that down and getting more deep into less things.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about how you've done that?
Yeah. So let's think about this. Think about relationships. I heard the analogy said this way. Most of our relationships in our current world are like jet skis. You think about a jet ski,
Great
right?
Analogy.
Yeah, you think about a jet ski, it's just surface level. It just skims. Now, I know right now as I'm saying this, I'm getting ready to use a submarine analogy, all right? And so, unfortunately, as I'm saying this, you know, the death of the people in the submarine, Bri's been just like following this.
Yeah, I'm not smiling because I think that's funny. I'm smiling because he's been making fun of me of how much knowledge I know about the depths of the ocean and submarines after these past 4 days.
It really is. I mean, Bri has generally went on, like, pun intended, like a deep dive trying to find out everything about submarines and this type of fibers and everything. And so, but my point is like, but it's true. I think relationships, really important, good relationships are like a submarine. You go below the surface. And, you know, when a submarine starts to go, it just sinks down. You know what I mean? It goes below the surface, and it's like how, you know, it's deeper. And I think that you know, and so that's a practical thing of a relationship. When you're present, you can go deeper. So if I'm having a conversation with someone, and if I'm just thinking about, like, I mean, I say this to dudes all the time. I'm like, yo, like, if you're going to start dating somebody, going to date, like, yo, can you just be present? Just be present. Stop trying to think about what do I need to say to sleep with this person. Like, right? I'm like telling, like, yo, chief, just be present. And when I say that, it's because why? Because, like, no, get to know the person, because they'll say something like, oh, really? Well, tell me about that. And then something else will unlock, because I'm telling you, the more I've learned, here's what I've learned, the more I'm willing to do that with people, the more I like learn about self, the more I get wisdom from people by just asking questions, and the relationship goes so much deeper. So that's the thing about being present. I can tell you one benefit, man, that's been so helpful for me is older people, whether they've had success or just natural success, or like, I love getting around older people in their faith, because man, to be that committed to something for so long is inspiring to me. But when I just asked them so many questions, and you just learn, and I'm like, oh man, that's an idea. Oh, that's a thought. Well, how do I do with that? And so I think being present will help you in your relationships. I think being present will help you at work. And I think it's going below the surface. And it's just, but you got to be willing to just be there in the moment and just let life happen, but saying, okay, I'm going to be there. So that could be, man, what about when you're grocery shopping? So that would sound like, man, okay, I got just things to do. But when you're grocery shopping, are you just aloof to what's happening? Or are you like, no, I'm going to be present as I'm going, because there's thoughts going through your head. Mm-hmm. And those thoughts going through your head, there may be an idea that pops up. There may be a person that you see. There may be something that you see, a child playing in between in the aisles or something like that, the grocery store, that sparks an idea for you. I'm telling you, being present, like the ideas and the things, and it creates wonder, become absolutely limitless.
Mm-hmm. I feel like practically one of the best things that listeners could do is just start reducing their input. Like, turn off all of your notifications except what's essential. Take away all of the random apps that you use. Mm-hmm. Unfollow a lot of accounts that you follow mm-hmm. on social media.
Yeah.
Like what you did. Like, you reduce the number of podcasts and books that you read and listen to, so that you can really think about some of the content that you're receiving.
Yep.
What is something, since you've done that, that has kind of, I guess, been unearthed within you, an idea or a thought that you've sought deeper because of some of the reductions you've put in place?
Yeah, I would say one was even concept. So this is a concept I'll use and talk and communicate, and I think in leadership settings that will add some value to people's lives, I believe, hopefully. And that came from, like I said, just all the stuff I went through, and then just listening to a podcast and just getting lost into, a very simple podcast. It's just about movies. I would say that it's helped me to understand information better and to digest it and to think about it critically. An example, I am reading a book, and the book is called The Creative Act. It's The Creative Act, and it's by Rick Rubin, the founder of Def Jam Records, Run DMC, Beastie Boys, 99 Problems, Jay-Z, all that. Rick Rubin, this book, and it is designed, I would tell you, get the physical copy. It's designed so well and so simple. And reading that, this idea of I'm like thinking about being present and all that. Then I'm reading this book, and the first parts of the book, that's all he's talking about. He's legitimately talking about being present, and the way the book is designed to where you have it's only like 1 or 2 pages each chapter, and then there's like a empty page, and then there's and it makes you, the way the book is done, you don't even realize you're doing it. It makes you slow down. And so that's something to where I'm just learning as I'm going through this book about, and I've learned a lot because I'm slowing down reading it. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, instead of me just going to the next thing and let me get through it, what was that? Okay, well, where do I see this in my life? Where do I see this in this person's life? Man, what can I do about this? Because I love consuming content. But here's what I realized about consuming content. I'm like, I would consume it so fast that I have a great memory, but I would lose certain things because I'm like, because I'm just going through, and then I'm like, then one day it hit me. I'm like, so for example, have you ever binge watched a show? Yeah. And you're binge watching a show so fast because it's exciting, you like it, but then sometimes I'm like, dog, are we getting an award for how fast I can get? Man, I got through Stranger Things. I got through 6 seasons in 2 days. You're like, cool, but what did we get for it? And then you go back and watch that same show again, and you're like, dog, I don't even remember this episode. It's because we watch stuff, like you said, and we just are so inundated that now we don't digest and really understand that. And so here's why this is important, and I love how you said this. As you start to strip stuff down, it'll help you learn how to critically think. And that'll be another podcast for another day. But that, I believe, is going to be a skill that if you get this, the skill to critically think in the world we're in right now, it is worth gold. But we don't, our world is building us to not critically think about a lot of stuff. Even people's ideology, if they really drilled down on it and really thought through it at a deep level, I don't know how much of that they really would believe. Mm-hmm. I just think they're like, oh, these are talking points? Okay, cool. So, this is what this political party says. Cool, that's what I'm going with. This political party says this. Cool, I'm going. And then you start asking them questions. Like, you just start asking questions like, hey, well, do you believe in, somebody may not believe in a free market. Okay, cool. Well, do you think that everyone should just, show up? And, and again, this is very simplistic, so please don't, somebody who believes in socialism, don't, be mad at me because I didn't do it justice. But it's the idea of, like, showing up and everybody gets the equal amount of stuff and we have to go like how Russia was. And if you really ask them, okay, this is what that means. Do you think that's okay? Do you like the creativity, the things we've created? And they would be like, yeah, okay, well, I don't know how much you really want that world. What really is it that you want? So I think that's what it does. So all this, again, that's a long answer to your short question to say I've learned a lot. And it's by stripping it down, I'm just learning how to critically think about things and to think deeply about them and what they actually mean. And so that when I say something, I feel like there's more. I feel like the things I've been talking about more have way more impact, even over the last couple months, because I feel like there's just even more wisdom that's there. Not because I feel like, oh my gosh, I just got smarter, or like, man, I got more gray hair, which I do. But it's not that. It's just the fact that I'm like, no, I'm just thinking about it from every angle now, and I'm just not in a rush to get to the next idea.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's something so beautiful, and I think that speaks to the beauty of the human mind and the human heart and how we were created when we just take a second and pay attention to our senses.
Yeah.
It's like where all of that can drive you and what it can drive you to think of and create.
Yeah.
I feel like is so beautiful, but as a society, what we've done is we've set that aside and we've become so consumed with what other people are putting out there.
Yes.
And so we spend so much time consuming that we never take a second to think about what could be simmering inside of us, and we get so uncomfortable doing it.
Yep.
And that's why we all circle around the same thoughts and ideas for the most part. There's very few people who are creating something that's deep and groundbreaking because of it.
Bri, that is such a great point. And that's, you talk about something else from your other question I've learned. That's one thing Rick Rubin talks about in the book. He talks a lot about the external stuff and paying attention to things and being present there.
Because they can influence you. They can inspire you.
They can. But then he talks about the inside. And he was like, now he doesn't say it this way. I say it this way. I think so many times because of just the consistent, you think about if you were to really inventory what you really think about yourself consistently throughout the day. It's probably a lot of negative things, right? I mean, if you're in the top, there's 1% of people who actually probably walk by the mirror and be like, oh, I like how I look. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? There's always something. And so that's a negative talk, or man, you're not going to be, or maybe we're late today getting to work, or you yelled at, you yelled at a friend or your kids, or the thoughts that, the crazy thoughts that go through your head at times inside that you're like, oh my gosh, why would I ever think that, right? We all have these moments. And so because of that inside parts of us, I think so many times we don't ever really want to tap into the inside because that's some parts that are crazy. Also, I don't think, we talk so much about EQ, emotional intelligence. I don't think people have the skills to actually do that, right? To dive down and get to what's the reason, what's driving you, why is it driving you, on and on and on. And I think what he talks about, but his thought that sparked in me was there's so much going on outside, but there is so much in here inside a human that has so much wisdom that we can bring real thought to the world. And so I've cut off a lot of stuff that I'm listening to or doing because I'm at a point in my life to where I've done enough life, been in enough leadership circles, have had levels of success, I think have a pretty high level of EQ, all that I think I've got a lot of of things inside of me that I really need to really focus on to bring to the world. because this other stuff is there. And nothing I mean, there's moments where you read stuff, it sparks an idea that gets me to go a little bit deeper. But they're not, I mean, all the concepts for the most part are kind of, for me, I kind of hear, every now and then I'm hearing something new, a new thought. I'm like, oh, that's really, really good. That's really, oh, that makes me think. But like today, we've become so, I'm going to say this, and it frustrates me. We've become so shallow that if you just say something that like sounds somewhat deep, you know, and it's just like, you're like, ooh, that's so good. And it's like, man, they need to.
So deep.
Yeah, it's so deep, and we're doing it. I'm like, yo, that's stupid. Like, what they just said is dumb. It's not deep. It's not going to help you, you know. I mean, like, I listen to what people, and then this is what frustrates me, too, because I watch our pod, right? And, you know, Grady kills it with all the design, and I think some of the stuff that we're dropping is like gems. I think some stuff you say, I say is gem, and then you'll see a post of somebody that says but it's catchy, it feels whatever, and I'm like, think about what they just said. Oh man, you know, listen, like, you know, be one of the dudes, man, follow your passions, bro, follow your passion. I'm in the weight room, I'm doing, and you're like, following my path, cool. That's a new idea. Appreciate that, Bruce. Like, you know, I thank you. But like my point though is that I think there's wisdom inside of people, and the world needs. And I think you said it best. The world is in need of actual, real wisdom, and people speaking things that and new thoughts and ideas into the world that will help humanity be better. But to get that, you have to wrestle with it. It's a reason why Stoics and philosophers and, you know, and again, like, I mean, rabbis and thinkers of old, they would just ponder stuff. That's why it would take forever for a new thought to come into the world, because, man, they would turn that thing upside down. I mean, I want you to understand, there are certain ideas that are coming to the world right now, ideologies that are so fast-paced that normally would have taken hundreds of years to get to the world are coming in like 2. And then people are buying into it. I mean, just think about when QAnon was a vibe. You know what I'm saying? QAnon was a vibe, and people were legitimately thinking there's a global cabal, like eating, like, you know what I'm saying, eating children. And like, these are people who like are in companies as vice presidents. Mm-hmm. You legitimately think that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are eating children and they're pedophiles at some pizza. I mean, it was the most insane. Like, and people believe, these are literal people who are raising humans who believe this. And you're like, huh? Like, you know what? I mean, I don't know if aliens are real, but like, it's not going to take that much for them to get us if they do come. You know what I'm saying? Because like, we don't think that deep about stuff. And so I think new stuff needs to happen.
And that brings up a whole other point, though, because on the point of access increasing, which is such a beautiful thing, it's also diminished credibility.
100%.
Like, anybody can become a doctor.
Yeah.
Anybody can become an expert in something if they say they are. We see it all over social media.
Yes.
And so in a lot of ways, we now, if we're for the access being increased, it's like there's levels of work that we have to do to make sure that what's being said and what's being communicated and shared all over media, all this stuff is actually true and accurate, which requires even more critical thinking than what it probably would have in the past.
Yep.
And we don't have that muscle.
No, and I think this is actually, I mean, even in real time as you're saying this is making me, you know, again, you talk about like being present. It's like, oh, she's absolutely right about that the responsibility, and even for us and the work that we do, is how are we keep helping people learn how to critically think? How are we building that muscle? Making sure the stuff that we are putting into the earth, into the world, is doing that. And I think that, you have to build. I think, you know, again, the rise of Chat GPT and AI, I think it's going to be super helpful if it's used right. I mean, I can't tell you how much AI has helped me to actually think. I'm not a great writer. I can communicate, not a great writer. But they've taken things that I've thought, I put words to them like, hey, help me make this sound better. And those things that they've helped me make sound better are things that have stuck more with people because it's just something. So that's a thing where that's a deep thought I've got, but I can't put like, you know, I don't, you know, having the right words is actually writing it. Again, it's so weird. I can say certain things and think and talk deep, but then I start writing. It's like, how, the, you know what I'm saying? Like that's about all I come up with. And somebody help me say these things. And that's what's allowing AI. I mean, that's a tool with access that is helping me put some things out there to think deeper, but I'm with you. I think in school systems, I think we've got to help kids and people. We've got to help people at their job, those you mentor, those who are young, come up to critically think, because if they be men, as we keep saying this, the world is disrupted. It will not be led. And we're going to talk more about this by managers, but leaders. And so in that, we've got to develop people, and to help develop people is critically thinking. And I think it does come to a place, though, of helping people be present. And I think when you're present, you'll start to have wonder. And when you have wonder, you build the muscle to just go down roads, to really think through things, to go down that road, man. And then you get to the end of the road, you're like, oh, here's this idea that someone's been putting out there. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, ooh, that's, here's a great example really quick as we come to an end. It's like when you think about like the overcorrection in our world today toward men. No, it's not popular, but the overcorrection toward men. That in a real thing that needed to be addressed with the oppression, with just the fear that women live under, and it's still in moments to live under, we've now overcorrected to another side to where now just basic needs of just any man are now like, they're not seen as like needs. They're just seen as like, oh man, well, like, you just want this. You know what I'm saying? Meaning like here's the truth about it. Like any person, men need, like, they want to feel like validated. Just like a woman wants to feel validated. They want to feel loved. And sometimes it's like we've so gone the other side to where now it's gotten so ugly to where now you have men going into crazy, ideologies and worlds just because they're just trying to find a sense of belonging where we've ostracized them. Here's the thing. We haven't critically thought about that. We haven't used the nuance to say, hey, if a guy talks to you in the gym, he may not just be, oh my God, he's a gym creep. He just may say, oh my gosh, that's an attractive woman. Man, I normally am on an app, but I'm actually going to take the courage to come talk to you right now. And he doesn't do it in a disrespectful way. He just comes and asks you, hey, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. Does the whole thing. And if you don't want to talk to him, hey, no, I really appreciate that. Thank you. But, I'm just here to work out. Cool. Now, if he keeps pushing, that's now getting where. But if he doesn't, but don't say as soon as he says something to you, oh, my gosh, you're in here looking at my body. What am I? A piece of meat? Blah, blah, blah. And my man's like, I was just gonna, whatever. And I think those are things that have to be, and I know that's a tangent, but I think we don't critically think about nuances. So we've gone there, and now we've got men ostracized over here, and I'm like, dude, it's not going to be a good thing long term.
Yeah, and it's like, while the increase of access is so beautiful, and I'm totally for that, it's also know that misinformation is going to increase too.
Yes, it is.
And I believe that as human beings in a society, like, we have the responsibility to not just like spread ideologies and things that are not true, and 100%. We all do it to some level.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that it's like when we put that out in the world, it shapes what people start to think and feel. Like we see it in politics all the time. Like what they put out and what they promote shapes what people end up thinking and feeling, and that impacts humanity. And so it's greater than, oh, I just heard this thing on the internet and now I believe that it's true. Like ultimately there's a domino effect to that, I guess a butterfly effect per se, and it's like, and it impacts the world. It
does. I mean, you look at our political situation right now, it's irresponsible people addicted to power doing whatever it takes to keep power. And because right now the way you keep power is by fear, we just will say anything and everything that will create fear. And so we will say that any white male who votes Republican, oh man, they hate immigrants and gay people. They want to take us to Nazi Germany. Or we will say any person who, cares about, the care for those in need or the environment, that they're part of some woke ideology and they hate America. And so now that keeps people, and because we don't think critically, because we aren't present, we don't do wonder to then say, let's play that out. Let's walk through that down. Let's walk that idea down. Now people are just in it, and they're angry, they're mad, they're upset, and it keeps the person, because again, if you're in fear, well, whoever's going to alleviate your fear, that's who you want in power. So that's how it's now turned into, and I think it's turning us into a very dangerous place But I also think the one thing about this country and the one thing about human beings that I think in a quick moment tides can turn. But I think it's going to be people who can be present, who can have wonder. I think people who can actually present ideas into the world that will make the world better. That's what we need. We need people creating ideas to make the space better. Not about how much money you're going to make, which I'm all about making money. Not about how much influence you're going to have, which I'm all about influence. But about, man, I'm producing this product, or I'm giving this idea, or I'm going to go serve here or work here because I'm going to add value and not just become something. When human beings do that, the tide can turn really fast, but we got to become people who really have real solutions, and I think wonder is the way that happens. Sweet. All right, guys. Well, hey, I hope this was helpful for you. We do. We really do appreciate you listening. Make sure you let us know what you thought about this podcast. Man, you can always, if you have thoughts or questions, man, never hesitate to DM me. The best place will probably be on the gram, or you can hit me up if you're watching this on if you was on LinkedIn, you can hit me up on the gram, Adrian Crawford 5. We'll put all the stuff we'll put all the stuff up in the show notes. Until next time, keep writing new rules.